Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and presented by Rockpoint Bank and EPB. Rockpoint Bank, from Chattanooga for Chattanooga. And EPB, get EPB's fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Cindy Lee. Cindy is the CEO of Lync Logistics. She is recognized as a champion for truck drivers, a leader for women in transportation, and an advocate for creating a family-friendly workplace. Cindy, before we get into your life journey and your penchant for breaking through glass ceilings, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Oh, I'm a Diet Coke person.
Are you really?
Yes, gotta have my Diet Coke. The kids used to bring it to me and set it right down beside me before I even said anything to them.
No coffee?
No coffee. I drink coffee, decaf at night.
Yeah.
With amaretto. That's the only reason for having coffee in my estimation.
That's the best way to drink coffee, a little amaretto.
It is. When I was growing up, Coke used to stand at the road and pass out Cokes for people in the morning for breakfast,
Really?
to get you to drink it. My mom was that. That's how she always got her caffeine, was drinking her Coke every single morning of her life.
My wife is a Diet Coke addict, but she waits until after she has her coffee because she mixes a concoction of coffee that, I mean, by definition, it might be coffee. Other people might call it dessert.
Exactly. If you can't put enough sugar and enough milk into it with just a little bit of coffee, then it's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, welcome to My Morning Cup. I'm glad you're here. And I know we've probably run across each other over the years, but really have not gotten to know you and just wanted to have that conversation with you and talk about your story. You're quite accomplished.
I wouldn't say that. I think I'm very lucky to be where I am.
Well, and that's a great point because we all are lucky, number one, to be here in this great town.
It is. Chattanooga is absolutely fantastic. I remember growing up thinking, I'm leaving this place. I'm out of here.
Well, and that was a lot of people. And you grew up in Chattanooga, East Ridge area?
I did. I grew up right off of Belvoir Avenue, 1st Street in East Ridge, right next to the interstate.
Oh, yeah.
When I was growing up there, that's when they built the interstate.
Oh, that had to be interesting.
It was wild. It's also, we made a lot of money as kids because we would sneak down there every afternoon when they quit working and get their Coke bottles and then take them back and, turn them in for 10 cents.
Now you're talking about something a lot of folks don't remember in terms of a lot of the younger generation. It's like, what, you picked up old Coke bottles and turned them in?
Recycling at its finest. But I remember we made a ton of money until we got caught.
Caught by the workers or caught by the people you were turning the bottles?
No, caught by the workers.
Really?
Because everybody saved those bottles. That was the way to make money. So they would save them and then they would take them once a weekend. And so we would go down and steal them. And so one night they had a guard. He caught us.
How old?
I was probably 12.
12. Now I'm curious, the interstate being built while you were a kid growing up, what was there before? Was it a tract of homes and they tore them down?
In fact, the first house I remember being in was at the corner of Northmore and North Terrace. And that house was built over a culvert. So if it rained, you heard all the water running underneath you, these big old culverts. And my parents were renting it while they built this other house. And we had to move out early because they tore that house down for the interstate. It was all just houses in through there and small roads.
So it just took neighborhoods out.
It wiped out and put a barrier between Brainerd and East Ridge. It was definitely a defining thing in the city.
When they built those interstates in the late 50s, 60s, and up into the 70s, they dissected a lot of great towns and ruined a lot of great neighborhoods.
And they were also built on racial lines.
Yeah.
They isolated Black communities.
Yeah, you saw a lot of that in
the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, in particular, absolutely. And we could probably spend more than another podcast on that. But want to get back to your story. You grew up in East Ridge. Now, you were telling me earlier you were adopted, right?
I was adopted. And I've known that since the moment I could even think. There's never been a time that I didn't know. My parents were very open about it. My brother was adopted also. He was 2-3 years older than me. He was redheaded, very fair complected, looked just like my parents. I, on the other hand, was very dark complected, dark eyes, dark hair, and you would walk into a family, like a gathering of my father and mother's family, and every single human being in the thing was reddish blonde or red hair. There I stuck out. The only person I looked like was my grandfather, whose name was Mike Donofrio, but he was not my real grandfather. He wasn't a part of the family. He was actually a step-grandfather. But no, it was weird growing up.
So with the last name, did you say Donofrio?
My grandfather's name was Donofrio.
So Italian, probably had olive skin and dark?
Oh, he did. And I researched his family, and when he came over on the boat in the 1910s, I think it was, they were escaping some issues with the mafia from what he used to say. Now, who knows whether that's true. But his younger sister, who was 12, she got to the United States and they turned her back.
When she was 12?
And her parents put her on a boat and sent her back to a cousin by herself.
Oh.
The amount of, as he said, we couldn't go back, and the whole family couldn't go back. There was nothing else to do. So somebody that also got sent back went back with her.
Did she ever get to come to the States?
No, she did not.
Wow. That's just something you don't think about.
You don't. You think, oh, we just let everybody in when they show at the doors. And no, it was not. It was, he describes it as the worst experience of his, he described it as the worst experience of his life.
Because we tend to romanticize our history.
We do. And he moved here. They lived in New Jersey for a long time. And then he moved to Chattanooga, met my grandmother, who was single with a child during the Depression.
Mm.
And she kept her entire family going. Her father and mother had been really big investors in hotels in Hollywood, Florida. And when the crash hit, they lost everything. So they moved back. And she worked at Provident. Carrie Hanlon, who eventually became president at Provident years ago, she ended up being his secretary when he first started and followed him through. And she kept her entire family alive and well-fed during the pandemic, during the stock market thing with just herself.
Those are incredible stories.
You don't think about it until they start telling you what they lived through. And it's like...
Yeah, because they are things that you look back and they're catastrophic events, but people made it through it.
They did.
And that shows resiliency.
My father was a product of that, of the Depression. And so he saved everything. If we were driving down the road and there was a lamp that looked nice, my father would stop and pick it up and bring it home. We didn't need it, but he would stop and bring it home.
My mother-in-law, who grew up in Upper East Tennessee in Appalachia, very poor, would save aluminum foil.
Yes.
Like in her 60s.
Yes.
Wipe off the aluminum foil, straighten it out.
I never understood that, but my mother did it.
But they saved everything because they had nothing.
And you never knew when you would need it again.
No, you're absolutely correct. So growing up, it's just you and your brother. You're both adopted. Talk a little bit about family life. And I'm just not curious, but you'd started out by saying, I knew since day one. Do you think there's a difference for you or anyone else about when they're told, if they're told?
I think there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
I had friends in high school that were not told till high school that they were adopted. And I don't know if you feel different than what you are. I just couldn't figure out why I never looked like them. And my parents, but my mother looked at me one day and she said, I guess it was little, and maybe this is a story I hear in my head because they told me for so many years. She said, I couldn't have children and we wanted one, and, we picked you.
Yeah, we chose you.
She did tell me years later they maybe shouldn't have, but that was okay.
As only a mother could say.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But, I think it makes it not be a shock,
Yeah.
Especially if you tell somebody at 16 when you're trying, or 15, or when they're old enough, they're always trying to find their identity. And I went through the thing of, you're not my mother, so you can't tell me what to do. I think it helps so much just to know that it's not out of the ordinary for your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's not just you.
Right.
and focused on you. So you and your brother growing up are both adopted, and you talked a little bit about your dad earlier. He was a pretty traditional guy.
My dad made Archie Bunker, and probably most of your people don't know who Archie Bunker is.
I do.
He made Archie Bunker look conservative. He grew up in an environment where there was a lot of violence, and the mother was very vindictive, and she locked kids in the closet and beat them, and he never hit me. Okay, don't. But he also had very strong beliefs in women should be in the kitchen, women should not say anything. Men were the ruler of the house. I was to be there to look cute, which I didn't do very often. He was, but I loved him. I mean, it was that thing. I respected what he had to say. He paid for everything. He was the breadwinner in the family, and mother stayed home. His company, U.S. Pipe, went on strike, and it turned out to be a 2.5-year strike, which would have been devastating to our family. My father built our house by boards. He would buy a board and build the house. I mean, we had no debt on it whatsoever after it was finished.
Just did it over the amount of time he could afford to do it.
Yeah, there were rooms that had no floors in them, but we lived on a great dead-end street in Belvoir, off Belvoir. It was great. But he definitely had beliefs in what women should do. One of my clear memories is my mother at the time was working as a cafeteria lady, so she could be home. And my father, she comes in, she goes, "I want a dishwasher." They had just come out. And my father goes, "I married one."
Oh.
And my mother, who never, ever challenged anybody, just looks at him and walks over to the cabinets, pulls out all the dishes and drops them on the floor.
Wow.
Never said a word. My brother and I were like, "Oh, we clean that up quick." And then she went out and bought paper plates, and we ate for the next 3 years on paper plates. She never said a word to him. And finally one day he goes, "I think we'll go out and buy a dishwasher, Aunt." But, he just grew up in a different world, and that was his world, that women were to do this and to do that. It made me who I am.
Mm-hmm. What would you and your brother do for fun?
Oh, my God. We lived on a dead-end street.
Yeah.
There were 16 or 17 kids on that street, and we were put out of our house in the mornings at 8 o'clock, and we got our bikes. We all played all day long. We came in at lunch. Everybody had to go to their own house for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to sit in our rooms for an hour after lunch because God forbid that you would, do something on a full stomach. You might get sick or drowned or whatever. And so we would sit there for the hour and then go right back out until dinner time when the bell rang. One of the people in the neighborhood, he was the principal at Kirtman High School. And Mr. Carr would bring home paddles that they had made at Kirtman for schools, because at that point, corporal punishment in this school was like no big deal. Right. You would get just hit.
And that was something they built in shop class.
Yeah, they did. And he would bring home ones that, had holes in them and to try them out. And so if you saw him coming, you knew that you might not deserve it, but you were going to get it. Okay. Wow. He was going to try out a paddle on you, but we didn't do anything bad because we knew every person on the street, if they have kids, would call your parents if you did something wrong. But it was the best childhood growing up.
And were you and your brother close?
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
There was a lot of tension because my father took him everywhere and did stuff with him.
Kind of the more traditional role kind of thing.
It was. And my brother was, my brother would be considered extremely learning disabled today, but back then you just got passed.
Yeah.
He was a great mechanic. He just had absolutely no life skills whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. So you get up into the high school years. Are you working part-time jobs or anything?
Oh, yeah, because my father believed you went to work as soon as you could. So I worked at Lake Winnebagosa.
What'd you do there?
I was working in the concession stands, the food stands there. You got that job, I think I was like 15, because there were hot guys that worked at Lake Winnebagosa at that time. And for 10 hours and $10, you got to flirt all afternoon. It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great job. It was interesting to me when I grew up. Lake Winnebagosa was, I don't know, they had white bathrooms and black bathrooms. Yeah, and those signs still were up when I was working there. They weren't being used, but they were still there. I can remember as a child, that's where we went swimming in a swimming pool. And the day after they announced that everything had to be integrated, they filled that swimming pool in with
Did they really?
with concrete that night. You know where they have the carousel and it's in the middle of kind of a moat? That was the swimming pool. And that night they worked all night long and filled that swimming pool in with concrete.
That's a story I didn't know. Did you know you can't go many places in the South without vestiges of segregation? It's really staring you in the face.
It is. And I mean, when I was at junior high school, that was when Chattanooga the schools became segregated. Desegregated, sorry.
Yeah.
And, Eastridge was their own little thing, and there were no blacks living in Eastridge. And one young man came, and he was delightful, but I felt very bad for him because he was in a place that he couldn't win no matter what he did.
Yeah. Could you imagine how difficult that would be?
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what the young people went through when Brainerd became desegregated, and it became, though you knew it was all wrong in your heart, there were so many of our parents all grew up that way. And to have to break those barriers, I cannot imagine how tough it was on all those kids.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the youngest of kids, was it a young girl in Little Rock? Was it Ruby? A kindergartner.
I know.
Yeah.
And being asked by adults
to walk into
a place they would not walk into.
Yeah.
The amount of fortitude that the young people had during that is unbelievable to me, because I don't think I would have been able to do what they did.
No, it's a lot easier to say, I'm not your person.
Yeah.
I'm not the one to do that.
So I try to explain to my kids when they were growing up what we saw and what we lived through.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't live through it. We just had to
stand
back. We were part of it. And they don't understand it because they didn't see that.
Yeah. What would you do for fun in those high school years?
Anything we could get away with.
Yeah, and the nice thing is we didn't have cameras or phones, so everything it ended up just being a good story and not a picture or a video.
It did. When I was in junior high school, Eastridge was so small that if you did something, if somebody saw you do something, we rode our bikes all over Eastridge. My second job was at Eastgate Theater, and I rode my bike from Belvoir to Eastgate Theater and then rode it back at 11 o'clock at night.
Wow, that's a pretty good ride. What is that, a mile and a half, 2 miles?
Mile and a half, yeah. It was not bad. It was only down. It was all downhill until I had to go home. But, my parents didn't have they had one car.
Right.
I was saving my money to buy a car. And we ran around. The big thing in high school was taking a car and driving around Shoney's on Brainerd Road.
Yeah.
We would drive around for hours and cruise.
Do that circle.
Yes, or cruising the McCluskey campus. That was another fun thing.
I didn't know you could do that.
You could do that at the time.
Oh, wow. So as you're growing up, what did you want to be growing up? Because you're now a very successful businesswoman, business person.
Right.
What did you want to be?
I did. I got a horse. My grandmother gave me an old broken down horse, and I started working. I had to work at the farm to get that horse taken care of. And I wanted to be a large animal vet. I worked for Happy Valley Farms for a long time. During high school too, and I got when I went to college, was going to go to college, I got a scholarship, and I wanted to do large animal vet. So I went to see my advisor the first week of school, and he looked at me and he goes, "That's the stupidest thing I ever heard of."
Why would an advisor say that?
Because it was 1974, and women were not expected to be anything but secretary. My high school, you were supposed to be a secretary, a teacher, or a wife.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "You can't do that." I will say I was 17. I'd never been away from home. You could drink at 18 back then, so you really could drink at 16, which I had been doing. But I did not do well in college. I did well in high school. I did not do well in college. I partied very heavily.
Well, join the club.
Yep. So I lost I was going to lose my scholarship, so I came back to Chattanooga and went to UTC.
I want to go back to your desire to be a vet for a little bit.
Yeah.
So once the advisor tells you that, do you decide, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to be a vet?
No, I decide, by God, I'm going to do this.
Well,
so
good for
I was
you.
taking my roommate was taking really general ed classes. I took an advanced chemistry class. I took another class that I probably should not have done. If I'd had the right advisor, I think they would have said, "Hey, let's take minor classes and work up to where you were. But this guy, I think he really wanted just to get me.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I had C's.
Yeah.
That was okay. It wasn't okay for my scholarship. But when I came back to Chattanooga, I decided, well, I won't be a vet. And so I really went back and I was doing finance and HR.
Was your decision not to pursue the vet because UTC didn't offer it?
Yes.
More than anything else?
Yes. And I couldn't go. I didn't have enough. I mean, I had any money. So I had to go somewhere that would give me some money or be very cheap. And no vet school was going to be cheap.
And I think when we were talking earlier, you'd mentioned you were young when you started college. You just turned 17.
I turned 17 August the 8th and went to college the end of that. I think it was after the day after Labor Day.
So that's really a year ahead of where most of your peers are. You've got everyone a year older. And that's a big year.
Oh, and well, your whole life, it's horrible. High school was bad. I did a lot of things in high school that I would not have done had I been the oldest instead of the youngest to fit in.
Yeah.
It did change my childhood. Back then, you sent your kids to school you sent them to school when they were eligible. I kept all my girls back. I have 2 that were born in August, and they didn't go. I held them back a year, so they would be the oldest in the class instead of the youngest.
That makes sense.
And then luckily, my 3rd child was born in October, and she was past the cutoff. So,
yeah, because so many of them that are born particularly in August and the end of that cutoff are the youngest in the class, experiencing all those milestones later. And to your point, trying to fit in as the youngest.
It's hard. I mean, I smoked, I drank in high school. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. It was fun, though, just so you know. But I wouldn't have done that had I been the oldest in the class. I would have been able to wait another year.
What do you think that experience taught you besides saying, you know what, when I have kids, I'm going to give them a little extra runway before they get into that?
I think it also made me always strive to be more than I was so I could fit in. Fitting in with the older kids was hard. I think it just made me learn to try harder and keep doing it. I also, when I turned 20, I realized that, drinking was not a good thing for me. So I have a drink occasionally, but I don't drink a lot. I think in my probably 18, 19, I realized that I drank to feel different.
Yeah.
And it made me think I was smarter, cuter, funnier. In reality, that was the alcohol saying it. It wasn't me. So that was out of my system at that point.
That's a great observation, particularly at that young of an age, because there's so many people that really don't get that into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But it really, that to me, when I got old enough, 19, and looked back, I was like, I'm doing this to be somebody I'm not.
Yeah. So you're at UTC and you said finance and
HR.
And HR. Where's that take you?
Well, it took me till I was a junior, and I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to quit college and have a relationship with a guy. Got married, which was stupid. And, it was a roller coaster. I needed a job. I got a job at Provident, and I was very fortunate to be put with people that saw I had some talent and moved me up quickly. And so I was making enough money I was making more money than my father made when he retired, so I thought I was wealthy. Divorced him after 4 years, thank God, and stayed at Provident for 10 years.
And what were you doing at Provident?
So I went in as a supervisor over the filing department. My father had drilled into my head, if you go to work, you're going to work from 8 o'clock until 5:30, and you are not going to stop. And at Provident, I got in trouble with a lot of the women there because they kept telling me, take what they give you and just make it stretch all day. And that wasn't good. So I got promoted. I went in over pensions, where we worked for a small division of Provident called Provident National Assurance Company, and they'd bought it out of Des Moines. And so we were doing pensions for large, like Des Moines, Iowa School District was one of our customers. Stroh Breweries was one of our customers. And we were handling all their pension benefits, and I was doing that. I had a staff of 4 underneath me. But nobody that's listening to this will remember, except maybe you, is that back then you didn't have computers on your desk. you did punch cards. So for every check we sent out, and we sent out thousands every month, we had to do a form that would then be key punched by these women sitting in this room with these machines and key punching. And then it would run through the system. You would get a printout and you would have to go through every one to see if it matched.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You never pissed the women off in that division because they would make just click one number that shouldn't have been on there, and you would spend hours trying to figure it out.
We had a similar thing in television, and it was always the traffic department and the traffic manager. You could be the biggest horse's ass in the building. If you treated the traffic department right, you knew your commercials would run properly and nothing else would matter.
Exactly. So then I got moved up to a division they started when 401ks came out. Mm-hmm. I was working directly with an actuary, and we were putting together plans so companies could go in. Back then, you had to put money into your defined benefit plans based on a 9% interest rate, but the interest rates were really 12 and 13 or 14, but that was the rules. So these companies are having to put in so much money, excess money, into these plans for the defined benefit. So when 401k came out, they could close out their defined benefits, sell off the benefits to another third party, and then take all that excess money back into their company.
And that completely changed the workforce today, how we save for retirement. And
it did. And it also destroyed a lot of people because those companies popped up, the third-party companies that popped up, a lot of them did not have the money to take care of all those benefits that they were saying they were going to pay out. And so they went bankrupt, and these people were left with pennies on the dollars from the pension guarantee boards.
So just to kind of illustrate, so when someone retired, they had a defined pension of, let's say, $1,000 a month.
Yes.
And then this group comes in and says, well, we can't afford to pay you $1,000 a month. We're going to give you $400.
Yes. Or they would say, we closed our doors. We're bankrupt. We can't afford this. And then you would go to the pension guarantee board. And I think it was about 25 cents on the dollar at that point. Mm. It was a very strange time. And to me, it changed the workforce. It's when you were loyal for years because you had that defined benefit, and then it went away. And
how much of that experience really molded your attitude towards building a company you want to work at?
First of all, it made me feel guilty for years. I mean, because I had a lot of the people from the Des Moines school district still calling me because that was who they called when their benefits weren't there, and listening to them talk about losing everything.
Oh, that had to be hard.
It was awful. So it changed how I looked at what we did as a business, what businesses should be doing. I feel they should be definitely more employee driven. Yes, we all need to make money, but if your employees are unhappy, then to be honest, your customers aren't going to be happy. And so it changed. It also made me realize how much you need to give back to your community, that you need to be involved in the community and give money to different organizations and that kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about how you got on that path, because you're at Provident, but really you were able to implement these things when you got into the very female-dominated world of trucking. So if you can talk about how you switched from Provident and got into transportation and logistics.
So I had my first daughter, and I was going back to work. Like, God forbid that I was going to ever stay at home. I was going to give her. So childcare was impossible to find. You found a lady living, some lady, then you would let your child stay with them during the day. And it just did not work out for me. So I looked at my husband and said, I'm going to stay home. And I stayed home till my kids were 13. And did a lot of charity work and that kind of thing, and developed my ideas about what I think works for people and what doesn't, especially based on childcare and how hard it is to find. So I guess when they were 14, my husband's company did some changes. One of our family members that left the company, and he was the HR person, and he said, hey, could you just come in and look at this? You got some experience in HR. So I went in. Third day I was on the job, I was served by the EPA because all the paperwork for our underground storage tanks had not been turned in. The tanks had passed their thing, but he just hadn't turned the paperwork. And so I did that. And then I stayed. It was fun. I was enjoying it. They had a small trucking company. It was Lee Smith, Lesco, and then they had Lync Logistics, a small trucking company. And I found out I spoke trucker. Okay, I loved these people. They were You never knew what was going to happen. They're people that, if they don't exist, none of us have a world to live in. And yet they're the most unappreciated group of people you meet. When I grew up, truck drivers stopped all the time on the road. If your car was broken down, I was broken down in Montgomery in a 1974 blow-up-on impact Pinto.
Oh.
I'd had it 32 days. The transmission had gone out, and it was stuffed with sawdust is what they did at used car lots to make it work until, So a truck driver picked me up. Took me to a gas station because there was no cell phones. But truck drivers were those kind of people. And in today's world, they don't seem to be valued for what they did. But I love these guys. So I slowly but surely took over running the trucking company. I had a guy who ran it. I took care of all the personnel issues and all the driver issues. And Rick and I worked together for years. And then when Rick left, I took over completely on it. And I loved it.
Was that Lesco Leasing?
That was Lesco Logistics.
Oh,
Lesco
okay.
Leasing does. Lesco Leasing, I rented my trucks from them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was a very incestuous relationship. I was on the bad end of it. I had to pay all their bills. But it was fun. It was absolutely incredible. And the people were great. And we grew it from about 10 trucks to 60 trucks.
So not necessarily when you were a kid growing up, but you originally wanted to be a vet. You find yourself okay in HR and you're learning that. All of a sudden you're in trucking. Did you ever look back and say, but I wanted to be a vet?
I never did.
Yeah?
I really didn't. I think part of being in the horse world taught me to, because I went back to it a bit after I left school, and is that it was a business. It was not about the animals. It was a business, just like everything turns into. And in big animals, it is a business.
I bet.
That animal gets a little sick. It could be taken, but let's put it down because it's cheaper.
Yeah, it's a better financial
and
decision.
I think that it wasn't the caring thing that you read about in the books about, this really nice Englishman that takes care of all your animals and he loves on them. No, it is a business. And I don't think that would have ever been me.
I think that's such an important point because particularly when you're growing up and you've got in your mind, again, kind of romanticizing, I'm going to do this. I used to get the same response with being in television was, oh, that must be so fun.
Yeah.
And it is, but it's a business. And guess what? I got a guy in Baltimore calling me saying, you got to do blah, 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 blah. And it becomes a pain.
It does. And it puts away those ideas that you had in your head of what your life was going to look like.
Yeah.
Thankfully, none of that worked out because, to be honest, I believe I am where I'm supposed to be. And I'm 70 years old and I love my job every morning. I love getting up in the morning. I love going to work.
Well, you have a great enthusiasm and not necessarily come to terms with, well, I'm not going to do that, but to love where you are because that's how life worked out.
Life throws more curveballs at you, and you just have to be willing to take the chance and say, oh, I think I'll do this.
Well, one of my favorite John Lennon quotes is, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Exactly. I met my husband a year after the divorce, and to be honest, I'd sworn off, man. I loved bad guys, right? Bad boys made my father furious, and it was awesome. I would never have gone out with my husband had I not married a bad guy.
Yeah.
And realized, oh, this is stupid. He's wonderful. He was great. He gave me, he goes, let's get married. It took us 5 years to get to that point because of my neurosis of ever letting somebody tell me what to do again. And, he's been wonderful. He's never told me what to do at all. He let me be who I was.
Yeah.
When I came into his company, he let me make decisions and develop who I was. And he's been very supportive of everything. He was a bit nervous when I walked in one day at the trucking company. When the trucking companies started using ELDs.
What's an ELD?
It is an electronic log machine. And these guys have to log in the morning, log everything they do all day, and they have 11 hours to drive. Before, you carried a paper log, and so you could get up, you start your day at 6. You could get to Atlanta and realize that you're going to sit in traffic for 5 hours. So you could pull over and log yourself out and take a break. You could still only drive 11 hours a day, but you got to determine what those 11 hours are. Now you have no choice. Once you start your clock, it runs.
So it's a start to finish. It's like a soccer game.
Yeah, and it's not good for traveling. I mean, like I can some days get up and drive all the way down. When my kids were in college, I could drive all the way down to Tampa, Florida without getting tired. There were other days I couldn't even get to Atlanta without going, I need a coffee or I need something to keep me awake and a break. Truck drivers should be able to determine how their 11 hours are spent or their 12 hours are spent driving. And when they take a nap and when they don't. They shouldn't be forced to take 10 hours in a truck at night to sleep. But when those rules all came into effect, and then we started all these huge lawsuits, when I first started in the business, lawsuits were, a nuclear verdict was $1 million. We carried $1 million worth of insurance. And most trucking companies are only required by law to carry $750,000, which is a ridiculous small amount. But as those verdicts got higher and higher and higher, we put cameras in the trucks. I was up all night watching those cameras. I had 50 good drivers. I had 10 that came in and out.
Does that become an obsession when you have the
It does.
cameras and you're like, oh, I got to.
It does. It's like, oh my God, I have to know. I have to know. I have to know. And then the dings would come off, a hard braking incident. So you would start to watch that. I literally thought my nervous system was shot at this point. And all I could think about was a wreck that somebody was killed, or my drivers were in an accident and either killed or an accident through no fault of their own, somebody was killed. I thought, I don't know that I could do this. I was involved in one death accident. It was not with one of my trucks. It was with one of a lease truck from somebody else at Lesco. And it was the most horrible thing I'd ever done. I had to go up with our accident advisor and deal with it. And it was awful.
I can't imagine.
But so I looked at my husband one day. I hated brokers with a passion. They lie.
Being freight brokers.
Oh, my God, freight brokers. They lie. Oh, it's all ready to pick up. Just drive your truck in. We're going to get you loaded. They'll get loaded right off, and your truck's still sitting there 12 hours later because this kid forgot, whoever was booking the freight forgot to book the appointment. It was constant, or, oh, this is only 40,000 pounds, and you got there and it's 50,000 and you can't put that on your truck. And I mean, it was just a constant battle of who's telling the truth. And I don't think they lie. Sometimes I just think 24-year-old kids, a lot of kids don't understand freight.
Well, and at least my observation with freight, not necessarily freight brokers, but in general, someone selling, they're wanting to make the sale. They're a 24-year-old kid. And I understand the culture in a freight brokerage is extremely competitive.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. And so I got really tired of it and said, I could do this.
It seems you probably said that a few times through your career. I can do this.
I have. So I looked at my husband and I said, I want to start a freight brokerage. And he goes, okay, whatever you want to do. And I said, well, I don't want you involved. I don't want your money. I want to do it with, and we were very good about our money was our money.
Mm-hmm.
But I never had to ask, right? I never had to say, oh, honey, can I have some money to do this? He just never questioned. And so we had savings. I took some out, and then I called my kids up. They were all out of college. And I was like, hey, girls, all those Abercrombie and Finch clothes I brought you? All those trips you took when you were little? And they were like, what is she doing? And I said, I need $10,000 from each of you. And they were like, what? And I said, I need $10,000 from each of you. And I know you have those savings. And so they all gave me $10,000. So they are co-owners with me. We started the business on a shoestring. And I've never taken any money from anyone. I do have a line of credit, and that's it. But all the money was organically grown in the company.
Isn't that the best way?
Oh, it is amazing. I love not having to answer to, I get calls every day. Oh, private equity, we'll give you some money. We'll do this. And I'm like, no, because I never have to ask a soul if I can do something or if I can make a decision.
We were talking a little earlier about selling family businesses and things like that. I think the great mistake a lot of people who build their business up to is selling it to private equity. I experienced that in the broadcast world, but now you're seeing it quite a bit in the service world.
You are.
Plumbers and painters and things like that all of a sudden you don't have that family atmosphere and you got someone who's completely focused on the bottom line.
Right.
and you lose control of what you built and what it means to you.
You can't do it anymore. And the one thing that I think has really hurt business, and okay, I was on the Inc. 500 list. I've been on the Inc. 5000 list. I've been on the Women's Fastest list. I've been all kinds of awards for revenue.
Yeah.
Revenue means nothing. Revenue is an end to get there. You want cash flow, but the reality is at some point your company has to make profits, and you have to take business that makes sense. We found in freight that we had a customer that if I name the name, you would go, oh, wow. We made nothing. In fact, we lost every single dime. The revenue was great, but there was no making money on this account whatsoever. And so we fired them.
Well, isn't that true for a lot of, and I can imagine who the company is, but they're notorious for being not only hard to have as a customer, but can kill your business.
Oh, in a heartbeat. Now, I do have a massive Fortune 500 company that everybody would say they are the worst. They never pay their bills. They pay me in 5 days, and I do massive amounts with them.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing. But we focus on revenue. All of these companies, you pop up and you have these huge revenue. I'm 2,000 up from last year. Well, you were 0 last year. So, okay. but if you look at those lists, over the long haul, there are very few that come back the second year. And I think we've done a disservice to focusing just on revenue. We should teach kids in business to focus on longevity.
Yeah.
So that you're not just growing everybody's growing their business to sell it and make millions off of it. But that happens to a few, but not everybody. And one of the things I believe in companies is that you should decide upfront, are you growing this just to sell it? Because you're going to treat your employees different. You're going to do everything. Are you growing it for it to either somebody nice buy it afterwards, or are you growing it just to keep it going and have good jobs and everybody comes out ahead on it?
Talk a little bit about the culture that you have, but you wanted to form, because I found a quote that you'd said that I think dovetails on this is people before transactions.
It is. If I put transactions before people, my employees would not be. They wouldn't put their effort into it. They would be not happy all the time. I wanted a happy place. Okay, I didn't want anybody that struggles to come in to grind. I believe that if you are comfortable in your job, you're not going to get fired. You're not going to get penalized for something you do. That if you do that, they are going to work harder than they would if they're always worried about what tomorrow is going to bring. I also understand when my daughter first moved back here, she had a baby. She couldn't get childcare she couldn't get on a childcare list. She got on it, but it was going to be a year. So her son, as a baby, sat in somebody's office, either at Lee Smith or at my office, every single day until we could find a sitter for her. And that made me realize that today that is, for women, childcare is the biggest issue that we all run into. Yeah. So what we do is you can bring your kids to school, especially when in Chattanooga they cancel schools for a tornado in Oklahoma. So what do you do if you're a parent? School's closed. You got to either leave work or something. So they bring the kids to work.
That's good.
We have 3 dogs that stay at the office all the time. They're our emotional support dogs.
So you consciously wanted to develop a culture that puts your employees first.
Yes.
And in setting that up, how do you do that? Is it all? I know in setting it up, you've got your protocols and everything, but once you get going, was it difficult to say, no, this is the way we're going to be, and make those, for lack of a better term, sacrifices?
Yeah, the freight market goes up and down on a pretty 18-month cycle. And after COVID, the world changed completely. We had a 4-year downturn in the market, which killed trucking companies, legitimate trucking companies. It killed brokerages, and it made life very difficult for everybody. So I felt that we needed to really, we kept people on that we shouldn't, right? Because what were they going to do? What were you going to do? You're going to let somebody go in a market that they can't find a job?
Some people will.
Some people will. We didn't.
Yeah.
We asked everybody to dig deep. Did we make money during that time period? No. No. But, fortunately enough, we had a war chest that we could get through whatever we did. I don't take any money out of the company. I wait till the end of the year. If there's profits, I'll take something, but we don't live out of the company. Like, there's no cars, there's no nothing. It's strictly whatever benefits we can are given to the employees. I don't know when I just think I'm the mother comes out in you,
Yeah.
maybe, and that's what I think women bring to the table way more than men. We look at emotional intelligence and emotional issues, not in a cry way, but like, okay, how does this affect someone else? I noticed in my husband's business, it was a bottom line. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, we have to do this. But even during the depressions, they kept all their, when the market would turn down, they kept all of their employees. They only had one time ever, and that was right before COVID that we had an issue. But I just think, I think women bring that to the table, where you look at that if your employees are happy, everything is going to work better for you.
And I like the way you put that, because I think a lot of times with a male leader, it's almost a masculinity to make that hard decision. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't like this decision; it's killing me. But by golly, we got to let 10 people go.
Yeah. And see, in my case, I would go, okay, let's figure out what we can cut.
Yeah,
And have we cut people? Oh yeah.
yeah,
But generally we give them 4 and 5 chances before we do it.
yeah.
There is a huge drug problem in freight brokerages.
Is there?
And it's young. They're young kids, 24 years old, 25 years old. I've had 2 kids that I tried to rehabilitate, and it just didn't happen. I gave them second chances. I did whatever I needed to do. It didn't happen.
And then you got to make that decision.
And then you have to make that decision. And then they call you back and go, oh my God, I've cleaned up. And you're like, I'm sorry. I gave you too many chances. I can't do it again.
Yeah.
But that for me is like, as a failure as a parent. It's like, oh my God, I didn't keep them safe.
One of the things I've heard in the past, and you hear this from big corporations, is take care of your stockholders.
Yes.
And the opposite is really true. Take care of your employees and your
stockholders will be happy.
Yep. They'll be happy because you're taking care of your clients.
Yes. And that makes it, I think people forget that. And, we do have these huge corporations, Amazon. Amazon didn't care, their employees are a dime a dozen. But the reality is I don't think they ever realize that as a consumer, sometimes I make my choices over issues that the main company does. I have a red card in my wallet that I used to use constantly, and I haven't used it in a year and a half.
It's so funny you brought that up, because our oldest daughter just had a baby in May, and we went down to Austin to help. And my wife has a red card in her wallet that she hadn't used in almost 2 years that we had to use.
You do. It kills me when I walk in now. I went in there the other day because my grandson is just infatuated with truckies. He has to have tons of truckies, and he goes, "We go Red Store, get truckies," and I was like, okay. But you do make, and I think today more people make those decisions than they did years ago. But I want to be ethical. We do look at trucking companies as our customer, not just as a means to an end. A lot of times they won't let me talk to trucking companies when they're pissed off, because I generally give in to whatever they ask, because I know what it's like on their side. So they isolate me from some things that they know I'm going to be a wimp about.
What do you attribute the longevity of first Lync America and now Lync Logistics?
Well, so Lync America, the funny story is that all the guys, my HR, everybody at Lee Smith got together when we first started this, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we need to have something that sounds bold." And well, it turns out when you would call up and say, "Hey, I'm with Lync America," they would hang up the phone, and it's because everybody thought that we were a credit card company, a credit card collection company trying to collect.
Interesting.
So a couple of years later, we decided to rebrand the company, or 15 years in the company, we decided to rebrand it. And so we were looking for names and doing everything. So I wanted a company called Gnome Trucking. We gnome where our trucks are.
GNOME?
Yeah. I had
Lookout Mountain and the Gnomes?
Yeah. I thought that would be a really catchy name, or Three Dog Trucking. I had some really cool names. But, We hired Gary V at
VaynerMedia.
VaynerMedia in town. Brent Goldberg at the time worked for me. We hired Gary Vayner, and Gary came up with Lync Logistics, and came up with all the design, and we switched everything over. I think Lync America made it because Coke was one of our biggest customers at that point, Coke United. So we had guaranteed stuff going. And then when we really became Lync America, we moved into a different market. We moved past just companies we knew and started taking freight all over. I think Lync Logistics, we moved it to Lync Logistics. I think I forgot to tell you, we shut down the trucking company. 3 years after I started the brokerage, I looked at my husband. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going crazy. I don't have sleep. I don't do anything. And so it has been the hardest thing I ever did because I loved all the key people I work for. So nobody knew. We made the decision on Monday. We called everybody in for a safety meeting on Saturday morning, and I bawled for hours. They bawled for hours, and just said I was closing it down. But I gave everybody 3 months insurance, a month's pay. They all had jobs within 10 minutes of walking out of my office. But I still get phone calls. I still talk to all my truck drivers. I have one young man who was the bane of my existence as a truck driver. I mean, just the bane. But you could just see inside of him that he was really good, but he just had a hard life, right? And to this day, he still calls me, and we talk all the time. And he's turned into absolutely the most fantastic father and young man you could ever imagine. But no, I didn't give up on him. But so when we closed the trucking company, then it allowed us to focus directly on Lync Logistics. And we put all of our energy into that.
And we're getting close to running out of time. So I want you to look back a little bit and just kind of your career. And now you've successfully built a couple of companies. Are you ever going to retire, or do you want to work forever?
Well, the joke has always been, I get phone calls every day, you need to retire. And I'm like, well, I already have we all talk about exit strategies, right? So my husband and I had an exit strategy that if things got really bad, we were going to run the motorhome off of the Sunshine Parkway, and just go into the air.
There you go.
So I was telling this guy who was so persistent about calling all the time about, you need to look at selling. And I said, well, I already have my plan. And he said, what is it? And I said, well, I'm going to die at my desk, and then I'm going to have them encase me in acrylic sitting at my desk. And the guys are going to call in. I've got to pardon my will for California psychics to come in once a month and, communicate with me, and then they'll communicate with my COO. So the company will be fine. Men's never call me back again. I don't have a plan. Should I have a plan? I do have a plan if something happens to me.
But I don't get the sense you're a person that wants to sit back and just let life happen.
No. I had a hip replacement, and 4 days later, I was back in my office. I don't know. Staying at home and not having interaction with people. I'm not really good at going to lunch and, doing the things. Yeah, that's not me. I'll probably do this. You'll probably see me in my seat somewhere, conked out.
Well, you've made a pretty big mark on Chattanooga.
I don't know but I've made a mark on my life, and I think I've done really well with raising my children. I think they're all productive members of society, and hopefully some of the one thing I'm probably the happiest about is that I had my own company, so I could choose to give back whenever I wanted to. I do see a lot of companies today that do not support charities in Chattanooga. And I think we as business owners need to do it, but we need to do it vocally.
Yeah.
Anonymous donations to an organization do not bring other people in.
Wow, that is such a great point, because a lot of people do like to be under the radar, but there's such a value to having particularly lead donors, but even all through the line of recognizable names that people go, well, if that's good enough for Lync Logistics, I need to look into that.
Or, to me, some of the bigger brokerages in town, if they donate money in their name, then it makes the smaller ones do things.
Yeah.
I do think that's huge.
And it helps begin a habit.
It does.
And frankly, that's got to, in my opinion, that's got to be part of the business strategy, is to be involved in the community and to have that presence, because it raises your level I'm not going to say importance or acceptance, but it puts you at a level that your competitors may not be at.
And I get in my business, giving money in Chattanooga really, to be honest, doesn't help me get customers at all, right?
Right.
But it makes everybody in my company feel proud when they see our name on something.
Well, and that's the important point. The employees take great pride in it. And the more prideful employees you have, the better company you have.
It is. So with Wine Women and Shoes, we were presenting sponsor for 3 or 4 years. And I bought a table for all my female employees.
Yeah.
You know, they had the best. I mean, that was a big thing every year. And they started supporting Wine Women and the Ronald McDonald House on their own. So I don't know. I think that's a huge thing in Chattanooga.
Before I get to my last question, I do want to remind our listeners who makes all of this possible, and it's EPB. Get EPB fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet, and Rockpoint Bank, your local banking partner, your business, your bank, your future. Last question for you. What would you tell that 25-year-old Cindy Lee is important for a happy life?
Oh, that's a hard one. For me, if I had to go back and look at it, I would say that you need to be true to yourself. You need to make sure that you take care of those around you. And you should try anything you want to do. You should give it a try. If you want to do something, step out and try it. The least you do is fail. And that's not a bad thing.
And that's better than waking up and
at 70 years old and going, oh God, I should have done
this.
Something.
Yeah.
To me, failure is not a problem. Everybody fails. And if you don't fail, then maybe you weren't trying hard enough.
Well, it is the best way to learn.
It is. I listened to Federer's speech. He gave one at a college just recently, and he said he won 80% of his matches, but he only won 54% of his points. And he said, what I do is when I see that failure on a point and I lose it, I go to the next point because that point is not important anymore.
Yeah.
And I believe that you fail, you get up and do it again and see what happens.
Well, and that's a great philosophy for life, too, of being able to put that point behind you and play the point that you're playing right now.
But I do wish somebody had looked at me and said, Cindy, it's going to be okay. Whatever decision you make, it's going to be fine.
You know, it's interesting you use that term, it's going to be okay. A lot of people that have been on this podcast, when I ask that question, the response comes back, I tell myself everything's going to be okay. And that's true.
It is. At 20, you think it's a life-changing decision that no matter what you make, you know, you've got to do this and it's going to define everything. And it's not. It's okay. If you make a bad decision, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so appreciative of you coming in and doing it.
You made it so easy. I have to say I was a little worried about this, but you made it perfect. And thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And everybody should use Rockpoint Bank.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks so much, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.